We have the 4 topic group representatives: Rebecca, Katie, Andrew, and Rob. Then we have Joanna as a policy fellow, and then, well, I couldn't say to Patricia, you're not allowed to join, so it was like, okay, you're allowed in as well, but you have to swim out as well, and you have to queue. Okay,
so we've been asked to be, so you'll notice from the resources group today there was a lot of maps and ideas about how we could sustainably produce bioenergy crops in the UK. So my question, so I've been asked that question, is why should we grow bioenergy crops in the UK? Why don't we just import them all in 2050? Because then we don't have to convince any farmers to plant them, which is quite hard. Katie.
Yeah. Okay, me again. So I represent the conversion group. So we've heard about all the different ways that we can convert biomass into all sorts of useful stuff. So we know what we need to do. So why aren't we doing it? Is it people? Is it policy? Is it cost? What is it that's stopping us from actually doing it?
Okay, building on some of the themes today, I think by 2050 we'll definitely, if not now, we will definitely have a firmer grip of knowing what works and what doesn't work, and that should be a given. So given that, by 2050, should we be doing biomass and bioenergy based on jobs created, ecosystem services, everything else? Should energy actually be the primary target of bioenergy?
Okay, so I think by 2050, the bioenergy sector will not have expanded beyond sort of where it is now, for the simple reason that I think it's all starting to become, it's very confused for the public. Public opinion is going to turn against it because of these simple narratives about sort of deforestation, loss of things, and then it will become politically unpalatable to invest in the sector.
I'm already finding this stressful because I wanted to respond to the first question immediately and I've also just changed my question because I realised I was meant to be controversial and I don't think it was. So it's kind of similar to Rob's, I guess, that we know we've heard loads over the last couple of days about how bioenergy can deliver greenhouse gas emission reductions, we can get negative emissions, we can get ecosystem services, there's all the sustainability stuff that Andrew showed, and we can do all of this by 2050. But can we really, or are we actually kind of just being overly optimistic? There's a lot of challenges in our way, and like Mirjam said, I've lost track of time, maybe yesterday, we've been talking about climate change for ages and we're still trying to convince people of it. So can we really do it by 2050? Can we even meet net zero by 2050 overall?
Build on that a little. Can you imagine a planet in 2050 where the land and agri-rich countries of the world are actually being rewarded for the ecosystem services they're providing, and therefore the trade of produce and of carbon is actually mediating what we want in terms of policy objectives for bio?
Excellent. I all gave them 60 seconds, but they all were much quicker. So if people want to start to respond and have a view or an opinion, please come. Just come forward. The line will start building up, so don't stay there and wait to be invited. Move now and take the chance. Well, you pick someone you want to get out.
Is it the person whose question I'm answering?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Rebecca.
You're going to evict me.
No surprise.
Okay, people, please start piling up, having your responses or your questions. Come on.
So I think we should be persuading farmers in the UK to plant energy crops, and we should be looking at increasing domestic supply, because we can see that relying on imports is providing risk. There are also lots of benefits to why energy crops are an alternative for farmers in the UK, and so we as the use of bioenergy expands in countries across the world, those imports, all that forestry from Ukraine, Russia, America, we might not have that same access. So providing a domestic supply to complement is a positive thing to do, in my view.
So we need new fishes. Come on. Don't be shy. Don't be scared.
There's a single fish conversation going on.
Yeah.
Kicking me out now.
Sorry, it's going to be one theme, I think, until we exhaust this theme. So my question is that someone else is going to have to respond to. If we are going to grow more crops here to use because we don't think we're going to have sustainable supply in the future, we've already seen it start to kind of go a bit wrong. How do we make sure that we are giving farmers the right information to make the right decisions about what to do on their land when we know that actually we have a finite amount of land and what we do where is really, really important? And if we give them totally free will to do whatever they want, we may end up with kind of the less than optimal use of land. But we also can't go into a world where we are saying, like 1950s style, we need you to plant this and you to plant this and you to plant this, and with no freedom of choice at all. So what does the future look like where we get that balance right?
Okay, and we have a new fish, so people, please come. That is your opportunity to get involved and get your voice heard.
So to respond to Patricia, yes. Countries will get rewarded by their carbon, but they will become suppliers of that carbon, and so it will move from taking buried carbon from the ground to supplying carbon, recycling carbon, and then giving the products from that processing to the world, and that's how the economy is going to be based. So it's a different economy where we're not abstracting fossil carbon, we're recycling it or producing it, or renewable rather.
And we have a new fish here.
So I'm going to respond to the controversial statement that there's no point in doing anything because by 2050 it's all over. I mean, it would be one I respond to because I represent the industry, of course. But the reality is we can't let that be an option. In that every scenario that has been produced in terms of low carbon, meeting net zero, demonstrates a role for bioenergy, not just a role, but it's critical. Is that enough to make it politically palatable? Well, the answer to that is, well, you make it so that you talk about the economies, you talk about the jobs in forestry, you talk about the carbon savings that happen and come along with that. And so you make it a more diverse and nuanced discussion than just saying, oh, this is too complicated and therefore we shouldn't do it. You demonstrate those benefits.
Step in.
Yes. Okay. Can you repeat the question before you answer it?
Oh God. He will answer the question and it's a conversation.
So I guess I'm responding to Jess's comment about how do you find this middle ground between basically telling somebody what they need to grow on their farm versus actually how do we get something where you have ultimate free will that's happening. So I guess my response is how do we find a way, again, of probably publicly or at least publicly and privately funding farm extension to actually possibly be the mechanism for doing that. Because, we had a free farm advisory service which was ADAS, still exists, but it was privatised. And classically, of course, you privatise it, and I guess far fewer farmers now access that. So that's my response. I guess putting out there is that the mechanism by which we do it to find that middle ground.
Well, don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'm a bit afraid people start falling asleep and you're just thinking of the drinks and the dinner or running off. Okay. Who are you replacing?
So hello everybody. About the question of the Andrew, I think it's a question was about the future of the image of the future climate net zero and about the economy and job creation and business. I think it's we must consider that the first priority of the society is about the economy, is about the employment, is about having a low inflation and many stuff like that. Business is so crucial for the future. For any time of the human life, and I think we cannot minimize the emission in the future by having less GDP, less economic growth, and high unemployment. I think we must find some model that maximize the unemployment, maximize the employment, and also maximize the economic growth, considering the minimizing the, at the second objective, minimizing the carbon emission. Yes.
I don't have a ticket. I'm taking your seat.
And obviously, people who have been in, you have a chance to come back and ask another question or respond.
So I'm going to mix it up and ask a question, and then I feel like we can just let people respond if they're already sat here. So my thoughts are, at the moment in this country, we produce a lot of electricity by burning a large amount of biomass in it at one particular location. But I wonder about whether the future of bioenergy in 2050 is about small-scale clusters, like we've got the industrial clusters that are going on at the moment. So should we be looking into decentralizing and having multiple small bioenergy sites rather than one large one? And would they bring back more benefits? Because part of what I've been researching seems to suggest it would be a good idea. So to everybody in here and to the fishes, what do you think?
Oh yeah, thank you. Come on, Anna.
I get replaced.
Right, you wanted to abuse your
I've
power
only just sat
to
down.
change the rules and then decide to stay in there forever. Yes.
There you go.
Thanks. So I think the net zero strategy and the UK Times model that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, UCL, has done an excellent job on that, has done a lot. We've done a lot of scenarios on what that looks like. And if you look at the 2050 picture in detail on the energy system, and especially where BECCS comes in, much of that is actually hydrogen BECCS as opposed to power BECCS. And then our hydrogen colleagues in BASE have done a lot of work looking at the scale and the size of that hydrogen production, and much of that is smaller scale. So it's not huge, sort of 2 gigawatt hydrogen plants, but actually sort of like around 300 megawatt size sort of hydrogen production. So spread across the country. I mean, that is a lot of hydrogen plants to produce the amount of hydrogen BECCS and negative emissions that the models are showing. But sort of decentralized clusters make sense from a size perspective. And if you're looking at sort of scaling that, the spatial distribution of where the material is going to be grown, if we are going to be using more and more of the domestic source, then obviously those need to be quite close to the plants themselves. From a logic, sort of if you look at feasibility and logistics, it would make sense for it to be smaller. But who knows what the future is going to look like at the end of the day.
Okay, now I actually abuse the power of going in. And I'll replace you because you have been in here for too long.
I'm going to moderate because you're dangerous in a debate.
Oh yeah, I'm very dangerous. I want to be a bit provocative here because obviously we talked for a long time about biomass is going to fix it, and then we talked a long time about BECCS is going to fix it, and it's all the models, and now we're talking about hydrogen is going to fix it, and I'm a bit worried that is just another kind of like hype about one specific thing, and with a lot of investment and focus on one specific thing or a few specific things. And I think we have heard today a lot of different approaches and methods. And now you're here, so you might need to respond. No, but I think there are other people in the room who might have a view to it. And I mean, there's always the risk that obviously policymakers, not policymakers, politicians, industry, investors pick things up. They think like, oh yeah, that is fancy at the moment, that's fashionable. And then there's a strong focus on it and a strong push because there are kind of like a few people with a very loud voice. And then other things which have high potential get ignored. And that might be things which can already deliver right now and not are kind of like a future, hopefully a silver bullet. As we have, I mean, we have seen it, BECCS is not anywhere close where it needs to be. Hydrogen, we heard from HyNet, and which is fantastic, but where we need to get, it's crazy because we not just need biomass and BECCS so we need a lot to get to hydrogen, to bio-based hydrogen, because that means biomass and BECCS. So So I wonder if we need to be careful about kind of like just picking out kind of like hobby horses in bioenergy and then go crazy with them. And that's kind of like, you know, I might throw that to the funders, I might throw that to policy people, but also industry people. You want
Can
to
I use my question to as a
but you're not
yeah.
going to
It's a
get
new
an answer
question. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask a question on the back of that one in order to use my other ticket, which is, if you are an existing industry player in an existing bioenergy sector today, and you're being told hydrogen is the solution and what you need to head to, but you don't do hydrogen, you do biomass boilers and you heat homes, what is the response we should be telling the existing industry if we are setting a target that doesn't involve them? So what is your message to industry for that?
Invest elsewhere. Invest in another country.
Okay, do we have any more people who want to respond?
Yeah, we do have a respondee, so
Don't wait to be invited. Just
come on, Fish.
Patricia, you might have a response to some of the things you allowed in. Ian, any views? You're ready for the drinks?
Zainab, please, sit and replace Vahid and remind us of what Vahid's question was as well.
Yes. Yes. Hi, everyone. I want to respond to Vahid's questions about the unemployment rate in the UK and its relation to greenhouse reduction. At the moment, 20% of business models in the UK use circular economy. And it is projected that by the 2050, the rate will raise above 70%. So we won't face greenhouse emissions in the future if this model increase using circular economic notion. Yes, I'd like to stress about this. We don't worry about it.
No, you stay here.
Okay.
I'm going to respond to Mark. Oh, she needs a microphone.
Okay, so I think the short answer is that we absolutely cannot afford as a society to throw out anything that we have achieved. Anything in terms of carbon reductions that is sitting in current technologies, whether they're doing boilers, heating homes or whatever they're doing, we have banked in terms of our carbon reduction, and to give that up would be utterly insane, given where we sit today. We have to hang on to that. So whatever new mechanisms we put in place or new technologies can build on that, but we can't throw out what we've done. We've done little enough, and we have to hang on to it.
We have another Fish. Thank you.
So my question is that net zero is the only option in terms of climate change? Or is that if we are going to achieve net zero, either we are going to go for zero emissions? Can that be the next step? Because if UK is doing net zero, but not the other world, what's going to happen? We're going to have the same climate impact. Thank you.
I thought we had another Fish there, but it's someone getting out the bowl. Oh no, we do. Sorry for doubting you. I apologise for doubting you. Thank you.
So my question is, everyone is focusing on carbon. Are we not going to just do an exact same as what we did with petrol and diesel cars, where we're going to swap for NOx or whatever else? And so now we're all focused on carbon. Actually, the bigger question isn't just carbon, it's the whole emission cycle. What are we going to do about it? Because ammonia's getting peddled quite heavily. That's just going to produce loads of NOx. And like I said, that's going to be diesel petrol cars again. So this is getting daft, to be honest. We need to come up with far better solutions. Because you'll see it, I mean, yeah, it's just a bit crazy, really. So what are we going to do about it? Because it's even from central government, it is carbon emissions and not NOx or anything else.
Do any of our existing fish want to respond? Oh, we have a... Amazing. A new fish. A new fish has entered the bowl, thank you.
That's okay, we tell you off if you...
I'm not sure if I'm going to do the right thing.
Oh, no, you definitely do.
So I'm going to answer the question about, should we bother if the rest of the world isn't, if I understood the question correctly. The answer is yes, because everybody has a role to play. And the impact that we take here in the UK extends beyond our shores. We are such a globalised, we just live in such a globalised world right now that everything we do has an impact. And we talk a lot about purchasing power. So every time you spend a pound or a penny, you are making a vote for a company who is either sustainable or not sustainable. And that extends way beyond the bioenergy sphere. This is very general. But yes, I would say that certainly in the UK, we need to be taking action as well and being a leader for that action. So setting a good example for other countries to follow. Let us kind of, as a rich industrialized nation, let us make the mistakes, let us figure it out and spend millions and figure out how to do it well, so that then other countries that don't have the luxury of time or expense can then learn from our good examples.
Okay, just wondering if we could get I'm just wondering if we can get, if someone had a response to the NOx and air pollution.
Do any existing fish have a response as well? No. I mean, I've got a question. I'll take your space.
Now we're taking over.
So, in my presentation, I showed a lot of anti-biomass headlines, and I suppose I am exposed to them a lot all the time because that's kind of what I do. And it makes me wonder, what is our role in academia in order to try to overcome that? Because Patricia mentioned earlier around we don't want to go directly into rebuffing some of the claims in The Guardian. But what should we do? Should we just be positive? This is aptly timed because there's this new Survation poll that's come out yesterday, and it shows that of the 6,000 people surveyed, more people think that natural gas is a better source of our electricity than biomass is. But the more important point is that 38% of people thought that they don't really know enough about biomass at all to make a decision on whether it's good or bad. And that's the largest out of all of the potential energy sources for electricity that we're asked the question of. So there's a little bit of context and a question about what role we have as academia. And I was hoping someone from policy would answer and tell us. So there you go.
We first take...
A response about ammonia. My board's asked me to look at ammonia, and this is my response. Killing employees, you can survive as a business. Killing customers is really, really bad for business. Trust me, you don't want to kill customers. You can kill employees. People die in the workforce all the time, and companies survive, but you don't kill customers. And that's the trouble with ammonia. So I think the ammonia will kill them before the NOx affects their lungs.
Response to
I know we get going.
So I think we're in a bit of a mess right now with ecological, environmental, climate crisis, and we're there because of that kind of thinking. So we actually need to be really innovative in how we think, and picking up on some of the things that Mirjam was saying earlier on, what is value? Is that monetary value for you? Is that some other value? Is that perhaps value on how we use spaces? Is it value for people? And those are all things that we're all very much thinking of, I know, in academia as well as policy. And we should be, because that's the forefront of science at the moment. So I think that's where we should be going. We should be thinking of it in a whole systems approach. We should be thinking about all the aspects of value in our lives, not just one aspect.
Are you looking for a job? Can we help you?
No.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. I also kind of will do a response and a question, because I think one of the really important things that science and research can help us with is provide better real-time evidence and data. And that is the one thing that I think that we are seeing is really lacking. So the anti-biomass groups showing pictures of clear-cut forests, and they claim that it is the result of sort of, wood pellet production. And it takes a lot of time to go back and try and identify what was that specific forest, that GPS location being cut down for, where it was, and then what it was used for. In fact, it went into timber. In fact, it wasn't a protected site, or it takes a lot of time and effort. So I think the role of science is that coming up with cheap, accessible, live data availability. So I know that it's like the holy grail for a lot of the work that we are doing in climate and the environment as well. There's a lot of work that DEFRA is doing around improving monitoring as part of the 25-year environment plan targets and all that. And I think that is the thing that we'll need, especially if we try and scale up domestic production from all sorts of different places. But if we are going to see industry scale up where they are in fact not going to be using as much domestic sourcing, but actually scaling up imports, because that may end up being the reality if market forces go that way. So we need to have confidence where that comes from, and we need to have accessible, free, available data that we can really just go back, throw it back. In fact, this is not true, or actually they follow all of these kind of management processes, for example. So I think that's lacking, and that's a really big challenge.
Okay, and I think the last fish is swimming into.
Oh, I didn't want to be the last fish.
No, you.
That's
But
horrible.
you're the last replacement. Let's put it like that. You're not the last fish.
Okay. I was going to build on Anna's as well and say, because one of the things Anna just said there was giving us the kind of evidence and stuff we can go back and say that's not true, that is true. And I think for me, the academic community, particularly in DEFRA, we're probably the ones who face, well, probably not more than BEIS, but we do face a lot of pushback from our stakeholders about we hear people's concerns. And I think one of the problems we face is that the academic community isn't in 100% agreement, right? Like there is grey areas, there is nuance. And I think what I really struggle with is being able to articulate why there is nuance and why there is grey areas and what we can know for sure and where we do still need to kind of do a bit more thinking, do a bit more work, refine things in a really clear way. So when I kind of get shown things saying, well, this academic says this and it's totally different to what you're telling me, I have a kind of way of understanding why they've said that thing, how it fits in with what we do in territorial accounting for emissions versus kind of consumption emissions, all these different things, to be able to then kind of give this perspective that I can feel confident I stand behind. And, I'm not an academic, I am a generalist policymaker. So having a way of interpreting that nuance, I just think would be the most important and helpful thing for me personally as a policymaker.
Excellent. I think no, Dan. I think we're
last fish.
I think the time is the limit now. But thank you everyone for contributing. So a big thank you to all of you. Obviously, that was jumping between topics, but that is what happens in a fishbowl. You kind of like get questions, responses with different peoples and different views. Patricia, I hand over to you to wrap up the day. You have, I think, a few more minutes before we all get, because we're all really thirsty. At least I am. And you probably are. I actually thought we're going to start the drinks reception at 6. Give people half an hour to just relax.
That's fine. Okay. That was really interesting. Thank you, Mirjam. A unique experience within Supergen, in fact, possibly at any event that I've ever been to before. So that was good fun. So thank you to everyone who participated in that. And thank you to Mirjam for organising it. But thank you to everybody who has presented today. I have my personal favourites. I have my personal favourite academic presentation and my personal favourite non-academic presentation. I'm not going to say who they are just yet, but we may do that later because we have some posters. And 6 o'clock, we are going to have a drinks reception where the posters are, which is just next to where we have been eating. And then dinner is at, I've lost Emma, dinner is at 7? Dinner is at 7. For those who are staying with us. For those who are leaving us, because I think some people are heading off, it's been a pleasure to have so many people from so many parts of the country and so many different backgrounds today. It's been really enjoyable. I wish you safe journeys home, and I hope that you will continue to engage with us in whatever limited shape or form we may have for the next 12 months, and hopefully we'll then be back doing something more substantial beyond that. But thank you all.